In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. I have to tell you a couple of things. First, I'm losing my voice. Started on Thursday. Now, this is a really bad thing for a couple of reasons. One, being a Marine, you don't want to lose your voice. Because we never get tired of talking and bragging. If you don't believe me, just ask one of the members of the branches of service. And being a barber now, losing your voice in the barber shop is a terrible thing. You have to listen to everybody instead of talk. So you have to jump back to the old standard, the barber talk. When someone says something to you, you go back to, yep, sure. That's what you have to learn. Why do people serve? There's a lot of reasons. We see quite a few things in the movies and on your DVDs. There used to be a thing called the draft. It's like a service where you're called in order to serve. Some people do it for the adventure and the excitement. Some people do it because it's a calling, a duty. Other people do it because right now you need a job, and it does pay you, they clothe you, feed you, and house you. And it's okay when they're feeding you and not needing you, but when it gets on the other side of that coin, it gets a little bit touch and go from time to time. There was an HBO film out, which kind of touched me, maybe some of you saw it, called A Band of Brothers. It was about Easy Company, the 503rd, 101st Airborne in World War II. And at the end of the series, they got to interview some of the actual members of Easy Company. A couple of fellows on there, one said that he didn't join up because he didn't want medals or accolades. It was his duty to serve his country in need of the time of World War II. Another fellow who was interviewed said that he was from a small town in West Virginia, and they all went down to sign up. And 3 fellows in that small town were denied service because they were 4F, and they committed suicide because they wanted to serve. There's a lot of reasons people join the armed forces. I knew it was a calling. It's something I wanted to do since childhood. Plus, I have to tell you a story. Obviously, I'm a Marine. My whole family was Marines. One of the stories is my grandfather Hughes, William Hughes, was a Welshman. He came from Wales right at the turn of the century. And he'd been in this country for quite a few years. He was a fireman in Philadelphia. We're from Philadelphia. Some people say I still have an accent. I don't believe it. The day, and he had quite a large family. 5 daughters, 5 sons, and a few in between. The day after Pearl Harbor, on December the 8th, 1941, at his age, he went down and enlisted in the U.S. Marines. He wasn't even a citizen of this country. He lied about his age. Nobody cared. And his 5 sons went along with him and enlisted right alongside him in the U.S. Marines. And they served in World War II in infantry divisions in the South Pacific. And every one of them fought in just about every major battle in World War II in the Pacific. You have to understand the Hughes family. They were kind of a weird group. And being Welshmen, they liked to drink, and they liked to fight. My grandfather and my father, although each of them served in major battles, Bougainville, Iwo Jima, Guadalcanal, Okinawa, they never received so much as a bloody nose. Now, at some of the get-togethers in my household and in our family, my uncles didn't fare so well. And somewhere along the line, they would remind my grandfather and my father that the only way you get wounded is you got to come out of the foxhole. Now, it became a tradition, and they would battle each other. And the ladies of the family would go on crocheting or making the food for the evening meal, and the fist fight would go on. The only time it would break, they were either too tired or they needed another beer. I'm also happy to say my son joined the U.S. Marine Corps also. One time my grandfather decided after the war to become a U.S. citizen. And he went down to Philadelphia to the custom house. That was the place you had to go in those days. I was too small, 7 or 8 years old at the time. And he went down there and he took his passport with him and his discharge papers. And he went to the clerk and said, "Hey, I'd like to be a U.S. citizen." I'm trying to tell you what I was told over the years. And he showed him his passport and he gave him his discharge papers. And the clerk there looked at him and said, "You were in the Marines? You fought in World War II?" He said, "Oh, yeah. Hoping to get out of there soon to go get a bottle of beer, I suspect." And the man went and got another man who apparently was his boss or someone higher up. And he brought him over to the clerk's station and they looked at his papers and they looked at my grandfather and said, "You served in the U.S. Marines?" He said, "Yep." The man said, "Raise your right hand. You're now a U.S. citizen." And around the supper table from time to time when the family got together, my grandfather, I can remember him vividly saying, "You know, it was easy to become a U.S. citizen. You just get out of the custom house and raise your right hand." And somebody had to point out, "Hey, Grandpa, 3 years of battle, I think you earned it." But he already knew English, so half the battles won. He felt it was his duty for his country, the country he adopted. Never heard any complaints from my uncles or my dad. They didn't speak like most veterans about the war. But he felt an obligation. It was his duty. We don't see that a whole lot anymore. A lot of things are much too easy. And we forget. We go to our nice homes, our nice cars. I finally bought a luxury car, a Chrysler 300. I figured I had to surround myself in comfort in my fat tushy that I drive around from time to time. So now I have a luxury vehicle. We have our TVs, our cell phones, our computers. Some of you in this room, like myself, remember when there was no computers. When there was party line telephones, or rotary ones. My granddaughter once called me up. I was just 14 at the time, and she said, "Grandpa, we ever on the typewriter? I like to take one to school and show it to other people." And by the way, did you ever own one of those black flat CDs? It took me a while. I'm a slow thinker. I was talking about records. I don't have any anymore. I did have the old 45s and 78s. I think some of you can recall those. But it's easy today. Our life is grand. Times are tough with the economy. People are without jobs. Money is scarce. But it's still the U.S. and we find time to share what we have still with other nations and other people. But you can sleep every night. And you can feel pretty safe because somewhere out there, and there always is someone who wants to be a dictator and rule the world. And for some reason, God has graced this land and its people with a spirit of, "No, you're not. And you got to go through us to do that." And that's a difficult thing. Because the members of the armed forces, are out there standing ready and are deployed for our safety to make sure those would-be terrorists don't make it hard for them to come here and hurt you. They'll put themselves in harm's way. One of the things that moved me sincerely, in 1960, I hope I got my date right, when you mentioned, Chief back there mentioned John F. Kennedy, President. In his inaugural speech, it was just before I enlisted in the Marine Corps, said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but rather ask what can you do for your country." Some of us have forgotten that. Esther told you, freedom is not free and it doesn't come cheap. Those of you and I who have served in battles can't forget those battles. Sometimes we wake up in the middle of the night thinking about the sounds, the sights, the smells, the screams, the destruction of human body on both sides. You can't put it down. But like so many veterans and myself, we would not hesitate to go back in harm's way for each and every one of you. Some of us, it's our calling. Today we have the children go around and thank each of us who served. We need to thank everybody. We have a lot of good allies, the British, the Canadians, the Australians, New Zealand, Philippines, France, and a few other countries that don't hesitate. But by the way, in case you haven't noticed, it's always the U.S. that leads the way. A lot of people go to bed every night if you haven't traveled the world like I have, and see the starvation, the hostility, the pain. Sometimes it brings a joy to your face when you hand a chocolate bar to a kid in another country. It's the first meal he's had in a week. And you got to show him how to use a P-38. Anybody know what that is? Little can openers to open up those sea rations. You had to give them away and teach the people how to use one to open up those sea rations. Makes you feel good when you do something good. Although the Marine Corps was an adventure to me, it was a good life. I was honored in doing it. Mine was brought to an abrupt end, unfortunately, or I'd still be in the Marine Corps. They'd have to drum me out of the airplane. It was a good home. We enjoy these freedoms, and it's up to you to pass it on. Let your children know about it. Don't be afraid to say so. We veterans, sometimes we wear our colors and our military insignias on a t-shirt or a coat or a jacket, a lapel pin, because we're proud of our service to our country. It was a good time. One of these days I'm going to take out an ad in the paper and thank the U.S. taxpayer for sending me all over the world at your expense and paid me for doing it. I'll tell you another little story. I was on what's called a med cruise. I spent a lot of time in the Marine Corps aboard ship, and I was part of the fleet. My first 4 months, I have to tell you, I was a White House guard at 8th and I. That's 8th and I Streets, Washington, D.C., headquarters Marine Corps. And the Marines do a lot of the guard duty at the White House. I almost got to say hello to John F. Kennedy one morning when he came out of his quarters and asked for a cup of coffee. We were going to send down the chief's escort, my Secret Service guys and myself. But he knew we had a pot of coffee in a closet. He could smell it. He wanted a cup of coffee about 3 in the morning. Took his cup of coffee and went back into his quarters. I didn't like that duty. I wanted to be with the fleet, and I finally got transferred back out. We were in the Mediterranean. That's called a float. The Marines have several infantry regiments afloat all over the world and in every sea, and try to deploy a reinforced infantry division or infantry regiment anywhere in the world in 24 hours to hold the fort until the Army and the rest of the services get there. And we were called upon that some dictator in Africa was doing something and took an embassy captive once again, took Americans hostages, and our part of the Tiburon battle group was sent to Africa to get our American citizens back and put things in order the way we see it. And I know why I'll never go to Africa, because on the way there, each of us in the Marine Corps had to get 20 shots. It hurts. You get in the line and these guns and they hit you on each arm as you walk down the line. Now we saw the coast of Africa, but we never landed because I guess the dictator thought that maybe this ain't a good idea and decided diplomacy was a better act rather than let a couple of regiments of Marines land on his country. The people were released and we were sent back to the Mediterranean. But I felt good about that. All the Marines did. My unit, I was a team leader with a special team of Marines in Vietnam. And each time we were sent on a mission, there was 8 of us, we would pray. And one of the things we did was we put our fists together. And just before we left on the mission or exited the aircraft, we would say a little thing, a little prayer, and then we would always say, God, country, and Corps, and go about our mission. We felt proud of the duty that we had done, and the duty that we were serving, as do all the members of all of these services. We work closely with one another, even though we cut each other up. There's always that inter-service rivalry. But these are the things the service do for you. You sleep nights. A doctor in Dallastown, a retired doctor, and his wife, she was a nurse, volunteered their time to go to different places for their practice of medicine, and they volunteered their time. And he was speaking at the Red Lion Lions Club one night. I was present. I don't remember the doctor's name. I apologize for that. But he told us he was in Ethiopia, him and his wife, at a clinic doing medicine. And they were called upon to go into Somalia to help those people. And he went to Somalia. And when he got there, he realized how terrible it was with the armed gangs and all the warlords. They were terrified for their life.